Let's go, let's grow, let's get it.
What's going on? I'm Carlos V. Spencer here with another message for you with a good topic today that I think a lot of people actually deal with. And then a lot of people probably are trying to figure out how to get through this and how to navigate this. Learning how to forgive. Why forgive somebody, right? It would seem like if you are forgiving somebody for doing something wrong to you, that you like giving them an opportunity to get away with something. Give them an opportunity to get away with what they did to you, which was probably wrong, which that's really not the case. So before we even get into the full space of learning how to actually do this, let's talk about the why. Because somebody might be trapped up in the space of, why would I even do this? Like, why would I even want to learn how to forgive somebody who's done me wrong? Powerful people ask powerful questions because questions steer focus. Again, powerful people ask powerful questions because questions steer focus. Also, you need to ask yourself, why would you forgive? Or ask yourself important questions because the quality of your life is based upon the quality of the questions that you ask yourself. I'm going to say that one again. The quality of your life is based on the quality of the questions that you ask yourself. When you ask yourself good questions, you actually start to come up with answers to those questions. And when you come up with answers to those good questions, it gets you into spaces that you're actually trying to get into. So don't be afraid of asking yourself questions. Ask yourself questions like, why am I where I am? Asking yourself questions like, why am I not further along? Asking yourself a question like, why am I not in the job that I want to be in? Why am I not making the income that I want to make? Why am I not in the relationship that I want to be in? And not from an accusatory space. Not saying that you want to be in a space where you want to beat yourself up, but ask yourself this question so you can find out the answer, so you can solve a problem to get you out of the space that you might be in and stop running a rat race, keep doing the same thing and expecting a different result, which is the definition of insanity. And maybe you've been having the same result because you haven't asked yourself a different question. So again, why would I forgive somebody? It's said that when you hold on to unforgiveness, it's like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. So holding on to unforgiveness, when you're holding on to unforgiveness, right? When you're not forgiving somebody, it's like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. So you're harming yourself and you're trying to wait for somebody else to be harmed. That's counterproductive. So you want to forgive so you can release that. Let me give you an example. Let's say there's somebody who you haven't forgiven for something that they did. And I'm not saying that what they did was right. I'm not saying that it was easy to even get over. What I'm saying is you haven't forgiven this person, and every time you see this person, every time you and this person are in the same room, you're tensing up and they're living free. You're having trouble maybe sleeping at night and they're sleeping good. You're stressing over what happened to you and they're not stressing at all. You see the problem here? The problem is you are going through difficulty because of the wrong that somebody else did to you. So forgiving the person is not even for that person, it's more for you, because that forgiveness releases the tension. That forgiveness releases some of the things that have been done. That forgiveness allows you to walk in a better space for yourself. So let's get into the learning how, because we talked about the why. Find out why. And I'm not saying the why, you're going to ask yourself why, and you're going to come up with the answer today. I'm not saying you're going to ask yourself why, and you'll be able to solve this and get through this. You may have been going through this for a while. So give yourself some grace, give yourself some time. But ask yourself why. And some of the reasons I gave you are good reasons why you should forgive yourself. So, in learning how to forgive, in order to forgive somebody, usually you need the right tools to be able to forgive somebody. So sometimes we're holding on to something for a long period of time in our lives just because we just don't know how to do it. I knew somebody who worked on cars for years. And while they were working on these cars for years, They could do certain jobs. This person who worked on cars eventually, years later, got a job at a mechanic shop. And when they got a job at a mechanic shop, I remember them having a conversation with me. And he said, Carlos, there are things that I can do now that I was always able to do. This is really good. But I just didn't have the tools to be able to do it. He said, there are things I can do now on cars. There are things that I can fix and things that I can replace and things that I can rebuild that I always knew how to do, but I just didn't have the tools to be able to do it. So now that I have the right tools, I can actually do the job. When you get the right tools, you can actually do the job of forgiveness. You might have been able to forgive. Maybe your heart was in a space where you want to forgive. Maybe your mind was in a space where you even knew that I need to forgive this person so I can let this go, so I can release myself. But maybe you just didn't have the right tools. The right tools is the right information. So I always challenge people to read books. I challenge people to get mentors. I challenge people to go to conferences. I'm not saying those are only three ways, but those are three really good ways to replace information and to give yourself new tools. Another good way is also going to a therapist. I highly recommend it. I've gone to a therapist before myself as well. I highly recommend going to a therapist because they give you tools. And when they give you these tools, you actually learn how to do different things that maybe you just didn't have the tools to be able to do. So, in learning how to forgive somebody, it comes in a space of knowing that you need to forgive. After knowing that you need to forgive, getting the right tools to be able to forgive, and then getting the courage to be able to forgive this person. Now, there are different spaces of forgiveness as well. Sometimes you forgive a person, you just let them go and you release it. Sometimes you actually go to the person and you communicate to that person. I'm definitely not saying to go and communicate to a person to put yourself in any type of dangerous space if they've done something to you in that space where you don't need to be around them. So don't do that. Maybe sometimes you need to release that person. Maybe sometimes you need to write it down. And in writing it down, you can ball it up and throw it away. I've even known some people who wrote it down outdoors and then they burned it up and put it into a metal can. And that way they release this thing and they let this thing go. Learning to forgive is very important because unforgiveness can keep you in a space that you've been trying to get out of for years, and that unforgiveness may be holding you or blocking you from seeing something else on another level. It may be blinding you from seeing some other things. Maybe the unforgiveness is blinding you from seeing other areas in your life that you need to work on, or other people that you may need to forgive to be able to free yourself to get into other levels. So one of the most important things I believe about forgiveness is allowing yourself to live free, allowing yourself to live in a space where you're not blaming yourself for what you went through. Please listen to me. It's not your fault. It's not your fault that you went through something that you went through, or somebody did something that they did to you, and that should not have happened to you. But don't stay in the same space. So let's say that you're riding a horse and somebody pushes you off of that horse and you fall down and you hurt your shoulder. They should not have done that. There's no reason to do that to you, to push you off, to cause you to hurt yourself or to harm yourself. But let's say I come and find you 3 years later, and you're still laying on the ground, still holding your shoulder, saying my shoulder hurts, and you're still saying, I can't believe they pushed me down on the ground. Why did they do that? They should not have done that. But at some point, you need to get back up and get to a space of healing your shoulder and get to a space of moving on with your life and forgiving that person and letting that person go so that you can go on and be productive. Do you see that now? That space of not forgiving somebody sometimes is staying in the space where somebody did something to you that was not right, but you haven't moved on and you're still staying in that space 2 years later. You're still staying in that space 3 years later. You're still staying in that space 4 and 5 years later when you could have been further along But this space of not forgiving somebody because maybe you didn't want to feel like they got over on you. I get it. Maybe you didn't want to feel like you were letting them move on and that it was okay. No, it's not okay. But it's also not okay for you to be stuck in a space because somebody else did something to you. And it's also not okay for you not to go into a new realm or a new level where you should be because somebody else did something to you. I'll end with this. When you release somebody or forgive somebody, they may not even be ready. And I'm not saying you let them back into your life. So if you ever seen these hotels back in the day, they had an adjoining room. So maybe there were two rooms. So maybe I'm in the hotel and I got room and I have my older children who are in their 20s and I get them a hotel room and they're in the room right next to mine, adjacent to mine. And there's a doorway in between the rooms where I can go to their room and they can come to mine. Well, in order to go back and forth to both rooms, both doors have to be unlocked. If I unlock my door, somebody on the other side has their door locked, I can't get into their room. This is how I try my best to live my life. I try to unlock the door and forgive people. I try to unlock the door and let people know I'm here. And if that person chooses to one day unlock their door and open it, they'll see that my door has been open all the time. Now, again, I'm not saying you have to welcome anybody back into your life, but I'm saying live in a space where you are free to be able to move on to new layers and levels of your own life. Let's go. Let's grow. Let's get it.